Hello, hello. Welcome back to the P2P Soap Box. I'm your host and P2P BFF, Marcie Maxwell. Thank you for joining us for another great episode. Today, we are diving into one of the most pressing questions facing the peer-to-peer industry. How do we better engage the next generation of fundraisers and volunteers, specifically Gen Z and young millennials? With each generational shift, understanding the motivations of the upcoming group and adapting your strategies to their preferences can be daunting. And Gen Z and young millennials, who are now ages 12 to young 30-somethings, have been particularly challenging to engage. They prioritize transparency, community, social responsibility. And while they demand efficiency, they also want more than just a cookie-cutter approach to fundraising. So that means nonprofits must focus on building trust, developing meaningful connections, and empowering them with personal autonomy. So to help us tackle this hot topic, we have a great leader from our industry joining us. Laurie Benner is the Interim Vice President of Signature Programs at the Canadian Cancer Society. The Canadian Cancer Society is dedicated to uniting and inspiring Canadians to take control of cancer. And for over 80 years, they've been funding high-performance research to improve cancer outcomes and address the greatest opportunities for progress. Laurie currently oversees all of the organization's P2P initiatives, and she has spent much of her career leading the organization's fastest-growing peer-to-peer campaign, the Relay for Life Youth Program. The Canadian Cancer Society's Relay for Life program as a whole recently ranked number 6 on the Canadian Peer-to-Peer Top 30 report in 2023. So together, we'll discuss why the organization has strategically emphasized the Gen Z and young millennial demographic, and we'll explore everything her team is learning about youth volunteers, including their communication preferences and messaging preferences. We'll also talk about the importance of building trust with youth volunteers, harnessing their unique skills, and identifying the right staff partners to work with this critical demographic. So let's jump right in to my conversation with the Canadian Cancer Society's Laurie Benner. Laurie, welcome to the P2P Soap Box.
Thank you so much for having me, Marcie. It's great to be here.
You are our second, but not our last Canadian guest.
Oh.
So we are so happy to have you.
That's amazing.
So tell us a little bit before we jump into the conversation about just kind of your personal and professional journey that led you to your role at the Canadian Cancer Society.
Sure. So I've actually been working for the Canadian Cancer Society for 16 years, which is amazing. It's been an incredible journey here. I started as a coordinator for the Relay for Life Youth program. So when Relay for Life Youth was in its infancy here at the Canadian Cancer Society, I kind of started right at the beginning. Youth has really been my focus and was my focus for the first 10 years here at the Canadian Cancer Society. And we really grew, me and the team really grew the program from like less than $1 million program to a $7 million program pre-COVID. Pretty much overnight, it just kind of seemed to all happen and take off. I'm now the interim vice president of signature programs. So I oversee the Relay for Life Youth program, Relay for Life Community, CIBC Run for the Cure, and our Cops for Cancer program. So it's a big portfolio. It's all of our peer-to-peer events at the Canadian Cancer Society. They're truly incredible. We have, hundreds of events. We work with thousands of volunteers. So that's really, the real focus of my journey here at CCS. We've recently started doing a lot of work with the next generation, Gen Z, young millennials, to understand what their giving needs are. So that's really exciting to me. I wanted to be a teacher before I started working for the Canadian Cancer Society. And I feel really strongly about really the potential of youth and what they're capable of doing and the impacts that they can have on the world. So I'm really excited to be leading a real dive into how we can engage them at CCS in a really, substantial, impactful way. I've always been a volunteer. something that was really important to my family. My mom, did a lot to make sure that volunteering and giving back to the community was really instilled. So it's a big part of my whole family. So I've always been really invested in volunteering and creating opportunities and giving back to the community. So yeah, that's pretty much it. It's been my whole journey pretty much as a professional at CCS, and it's been incredible. So
that's awesome. Well, it sounds like you're the perfect person to dive into this conversation with, since you have devoted so much of your career to working with youth. So as you mentioned, Canadian Cancer Society has such a diverse peer-to-peer portfolio, but y'all continue to place this emphasis on the youth market. So can you tell us a little bit about what Relay for Life specifically looks like in Canada? Some of us, the listeners, may be very familiar with it in the US, but specifically, what are y'all doing in the youth market, and why has the youth market been such a priority for CCS?
We noticed a big shift in the investment of schools and the investment of young people when we shifted the program from less of a transactional relationship to really investing in hard skills, strengthening, and opportunities for youth to really dive into what it meant to work with an organization. So for us at the Canadian Cancer Society, the Relay for Life Youth Program, it's from high school all the way into college and university. And it's truly a student-driven event. So we have staff that are all over the country and they support schools. And most of them are supporting, 30 events, so like 15 to 30 events across the country. And they work directly with high school students and post-secondary students to make these incredible events happen at their schools. So these students are planning the events from start to finish. They're handling the registration. They're handling the money. They're handling all of the logistics for event day. And we're really there to motivate and inspire them. So Relay for Life Youth has really become an opportunity for students to feel like that they're empowered, that they have some autonomy over the event that they're bringing to their school community, all while, engaging in a really important cause. We all know cancer, unfortunately, impacts everybody. So we find that they really, really feel that they can connect to each other emotionally and just have a fantastic day at their school. So we're just so invested in it. And as I mentioned, Relay for Life Youth Program is the Canadian Cancer Society's fastest growing peer-to-peer fundraising event. So we've grown tremendously since we really started investing in students. And it's been incredible. So we go to a lot of student leadership conferences. We do a lot of training with students, how do they set up a bank account and order the tents and the food? And, how do they do all those things? How do they make sure that the students are registering and fundraising, which is a hard sell to do in a high school that's got, 100 other things going on at the same time as Relay for Life. So we really have engaged them. And really want to make sure that we're keeping them invested and engaged, because once they love Relay and they become familiar with the mission of the Canadian Cancer Society and feel like they have a little bit of ownership over it, they're doing incredible things. So it's really fun to watch. So it's pretty great. We have noticed that, and I think it's the same for a lot of organizations, that once they're out of kind of the school program, there isn't a lot for them to do until they kind of get into their family life. So as young adults or young professionals, there's a little bit of a gap there and a missing opportunity for how we can engage them. And they're little warriors for us out there in the community, selling our mission and talking about the impact. So our goal is to really keep them engaged and motivated and want to continue helping us achieve our goals at CCS. So that's really what we're working on now, is how do we keep them motivated and keep them engaged, and what works for them?
What is working for them? So I feel like Gen Z and young millennials, everybody is trying to, crack this nut, right? We know that donors have historically been, your baby boomers or even your Gen Xers. Or again, to your point, once somebody gets into a family life, they might be more likely to participate in a family-friendly walk or something like that. So what are you learning about this demographic, their communication preferences, the messaging that works well for them? What skills are they bringing to the table? Like, what are you learning about them?
I think our biggest adjustment has been communicating with them where they want to communicate. So I find that what we were doing originally and what we still, we're working on perfecting is that we want them to communicate with us how we want to communicate. So we've really worked on, we're on Instagram. We chat with a lot of our schools and the younger demographic in Instagram, in their DMs. And that's where we're communicating a lot. They don't like the long emails that are like, multiple paragraphs where we're explaining what they need to do and what we want them to achieve. It's like a few sentences, or it's like, let's text, or, so it's really about figuring out what works for them. Something that we started doing was asking them. So every time we meet a new student or work with a really motivated young volunteer, we're like, how do you want to chat? Like, how do you want us to communicate with you? What works for you? Is it WhatsApp? Is it text? Is it a quick email? Like, what is it? So it's really understanding where it works for them and how it works for them that's seen us get a lot of success. So instead of putting our expectations on them, we're asking them to do something incredible for us and spend a lot of time with us. So we really try to make it as easy as possible for them.
So when we think about this demographic, one thing that I've heard is they're way less driven by competition and way more driven by community or collaboration. So how are you finding that when you're working with this group as opposed to older volunteers?
They are really driven by community. So they are definitely focused on creating like pockets of community for themselves. So, and connecting on whatever they might have in common. So they really do hope to drive community, build community, and strengthen community. And they do it all by networking and communicating, and they do it all online too. It's not something that they're really doing in person. So creating avenues for them to collaborate and connect in a strong way. For example, for Relay for Life, they like to go on the day and participate as a community and as an opportunity to share with each other about their common experience of cancer. They're not there to see who can walk the most laps, or, they are driven definitely by like fundraising competition because it's impact driven. So they definitely are interested in building little pockets of community where they can feel that they've made an incredible impact. So absolutely.
And what kind of skills are they bringing to the table? Because I think this is, they're digital natives and they're doing things in ways that we could have never dreamed of, right? When we both, you got your start, 15 years ago, 20 years ago for me. So what makes them different? What are they bringing to the table?
Oh my gosh, they're so creative. They're thinking of things that I never could have. I don't think even when I was 15, I would have thought of. Like, they're really outside of the box thinkers. They're really thinking of new ways to engage and to build that community again, to make people feel included, to have an inclusive event, to really engage people in a variety of ways. They're so creative and they're doing just really wonderful things online. They're teaching us every day how to create a cool template on Canva, or how to create like a cool YouTube video or whatever, right? Like they bring so many skills, incredible skills to the table. They're also really, like, something we found is really interesting is they are teaching us how to communicate in new ways. So while we, I think our age, we were so used to communicating face-to-face and doing like the face-to-face ask. And like, if you're a fundraiser, that's how you go out and ask, right? You ask your grandparents when you're over there for Sunday dinner or whatever. they're teaching us how to communicate and how to fundraise and how to share your motivation for fundraising in new ways. So, and really creative ways. So like, why should you get involved and how you get involved and how you need to stay involved is really done in less the face-to-face now, and even more so in like a remote, virtual, digital, online setting. And it's pretty cool. And they're so creative.
And I have a couple of nieces and nephews in this demographic. And I think there are times I consider myself somewhat tech savvy. I mean, fairly tech savvy, but the things that I can watch them do, I swear, it blows my mind.
Yeah, it's unbelievable.
So I think what excites me about what you're talking about is how much trust y'all are putting into these volunteers and letting them kind of run with it. And I think there's a lot of organizations that are hesitant to really kind of go that next step of empowerment with volunteers who are young, because there's a lot of fear. What are they going to say about our brand? Are they going to use our logo incorrectly? Is, someone going to take what they said and spin it in the wrong way? All this unknown, right? So how are you mitigating that? And how are you, building trust between your team and these volunteers so you feel comfortable letting them kind of lead and shine?
Well, to be honest, I think that you have risk no matter what. If you're dealing with adults or you're dealing with teenagers, like there's always that risk, like it's the same across the board. So to be honest, like what's my kind of favorite saying is, which maybe is an unpopular thing to say from a liability perspective, is what's the worst that can happen? So what if they do something different with your logo? If it's happening within a school and they make the logo look more appealing to their demographic, and it means that more students hear and more young people hear what your mission is, like, is it so terrible that your logo isn't exactly what you want it to be? Like maybe the color's different or they use a different font. Like, to me, it's not the worst thing that can happen. It's actually the best thing that can happen, because they're taking ownership of it and they're making it feel like it's something that they can connect to, and they're the best ones to speak to their audience and their peers. So, it's been a shift for us at CCS for sure. It's like, how do we feel okay about it? But to be honest, in my 16 years, we've never really had, and hundreds and millions of dollars and hundreds of events and thousands of volunteers. There isn't anything that I can think that, you ever could have anticipated or planned for. Like, it's always the weird things, right? That when you're in peer-to-peer fundraising that you could just never anticipate. For me, it's more about getting them to trust us than anything else, because they have a million people coming to them and companies and organizations and asking them to do this and asking them for that. And then getting what they want and leaving. We often see where organizations will just be like, hey, do this, fundraise for us and let us know when you're done and we'll come back and pick up your check. And that's not what they're looking for. They're looking to feel important and build a community and do really powerful things within their community and amongst their peers. So we're really focused on helping them trust us, making them feel like as a program, we're going to be there to support them along the way. But also as an organization, we're going to do right by them with the money that they fundraise. So they also care really deeply about that. And that's making sure that we're going to do what we say we're going to do with the dollars that they fundraise. So I think the second that they trust you and know that your intentions are good, and that you respect them and want their insight and want their confidence in you, there's not much to worry about. So,
well, I think that is such a valid point. The point you make about investing in them, as opposed to just coming in saying, hey, do this, and then we'll come pick up a check. I think as a lot of nonprofits have downsized their staff, there's always this sense of how can we be more efficient, right? And it can feel very efficient to send everybody the same packet and send everybody the same email and everybody the same message and just be grateful for what you get, right? And there's arguments to be made, right, on both sides. But I know what I've seen in working with programs with high school students and with college students, that you're exactly right. The ones who are the most engaged they're also the most demanding, and you get the most time. They need your most time, but they're also the most successful. And so it's worth it. As you mentioned, the staff volunteer partnership is so critical for the success of something like this, but not every staff person is going to work well with teenagers. Same way, not everybody wants to be a high school teacher or a college professor. So how are you finding the right staff? How are you training them and really kind of shepherding this volunteer group with your staff?
It's been a journey. It's been a process, figuring out what that ideal staff looks like. And to be honest, it doesn't have to be. And often I get asked like, oh, do you have like a really young staff? Is it all really young people? And and yeah, for sure, a lot of them are. But it's really about someone that, it's about finding someone that wants to invest in a student, and wants to give them an opportunity. We have found one of the best steps that we ever made was not hiring event planners to work with the student population. So because we're asking them to actually plan the event, you don't want to hire somebody that is really good at doing all of the tiny pieces, right? You don't want that. You don't want somebody that knows how to book the tent and order the food. You want someone that knows how to motivate and inspire students to keep going, especially since it's not always easy. So finding someone that has that comfort level with really truly being the inspiration rather than the party planner is probably a key step for us, and to really feel like you can step into navigating the next gen.
Now, I would imagine, have you seen much of a pipeline from students who participate in Relay for Life than wanting to work for the Canadian Cancer Society?
Yeah. Most of signature programs, I would say probably half of signature programs are people that have come from the Relay for Life youth program. Yeah.
It is like the secret sauce when people talk about, wanting to have a youth program. I'm like, if you do it well, then you have this amazing breeding ground for staff. I know a couple of the places where I worked, that is exactly what happened. And it was here, these people that already had an exposure to your mission, this level of insight into what it took to put on a fundraiser, what volunteers were looking for. And then suddenly you're bringing them into the workforce at, 23, 24 years old. And it's like you're not starting from scratch with a brand new employee.
Gosh, they're already so committed to your cause. It's truly a beautiful thing. Yeah, some of our most of especially the Relay for Life youth staff were participants or committee members at their high school and post-secondary school. So yeah, it's amazing.
I love it. So that is how I got my start in nonprofit. Yeah, I was involved with a college-based fundraiser at my university, and then ended up going and working for that nonprofit for over a decade. And so, so I'll, pat myself on the back, why I'm not a young millennial or a Gen Z. I can at least have that in common. Well, Laurie, I imagine there might be people that are thinking, where can I learn more about the Canadian Cancer Society or the Relay for Life youth program? Where can we send people? How can people get involved with your campaigns?
Sure. You can visit relayforlife.ca. You can find our youth program on there. You can visit cancer.ca, which is where any information about the Canadian Cancer Society can be found on there. And then I also encourage you to visit our Relay for Life youth page on Instagram, RFL Youth. It's most of the content, or a significant amount of the content that's on our Instagram page is done by students, or it's ideas that we've taken from students' own Instagram pages to create our own. So those are some pretty great places to head.
I love it.
Yeah.
Well, Laurie, thank you so much for joining us today and for everything you're learning about this demographic. I know that is something that everyone is trying to figure out right now, is what is this next group going to look like? And then we'll have to have a conversation about Gen Alpha, because I know they will be here before we know it as well. And again, with nieces and nephews in different age groups, I've got one that's that Gen Alpha, and he is different from his siblings. And it is going to pose a whole new group.
Absolutely. We'll just get comfortable with Gen Z. Yeah.
Exactly. We're just now comfortable with Gen Z.
Yeah.
Well, Laurie, thank you so much.
Thank you, Marcie.
The P2P Soap Box is produced in partnership with True Story FM. Engineering by Pete Wright. Music this week is by Jimit. If your podcast app allows ratings and reviews, we hope you'll consider doing just that for our show. But the best thing that you can do to support the P2P Soap Box is simply to share the show with a friend or colleague. Thank you for listening.